Hello, third graders. Welcome to your writing lesson for today. Um, Thank you so much for sending me your animal report chapters. I haven't read through all of them yet, but I've read through a few, and the ones I've read through have been really fantastic. They're really interesting, and they're teaching me so much about different animals. And I really love the way you've been using transition words like we talked about to make the sentences interesting and easy to understand. So, really nice work. I want to talk to you today about the next step, which is writing an introduction for your report. The introduction is it's like a paragraph or two. It's a section of writing that goes before all of the chapters of your report. It introduces your reader to what they're about to learn about. And the purpose of an introduction is to get your reader excited about the topic, get your reader excited about what they're going to read in your report, and also just to give them a little bit of information to get their brains ready to learn more about their animal. So what we're going to do in this lesson is read through 3 examples of introductions from animal reports and think a little bit about what makes these good introductions. And then I'm going to share with you some tips and some sentence starters that you might try in writing your introductions. And I'll show you how I might write my introduction about polar bears. And then it'll be up to you to write your own introduction for your animal reports. Okay, so let's start by reading interesting introductions from 3 nonfiction books. You may or may not have heard these books before school got out. I think my class heard 1 or 2 of them, and I'm not sure about Mr. Gramboy's class. But even if you didn't hear the whole book, we can still study the introductions to see what these writers did. Okay, so this first one is from a book called Into the Sea. Here's the introduction, or the very first part of this book about animals. Tap, tap, scritch. The tiny sea turtle is the last hatchling to break out of her leathery egg and crawl up the sides of a sandy nest. She is not much bigger than a bottle cap and would make a good meal for a hungry seabird or a crab. So I really like this introduction. I think what I like about it so much is that, first of all, it starts with a sound effect. I think that's a really cool idea to start with a sound effect like that. And then the rest of the introduction is really describing in a beautiful way, using sensory details, what this animal is like. So one way that you might start an introduction is to start with a sound effect, or and to really describe in a very beautiful way, filled with sensory details, what your animal is like. That's something that you might try. So I've got, picture this, describe an interesting fact about your animal. I'm going to add to this, use a sound effect and describe your animal using sensory details. Okay, here comes the next one. When you think of a wolf, this is from A Pack of Wolves and Other Canine Groups. When you think of a wolf, you might think of wolves in movies, cartoons, and fairy tales. Some are shown as wild, bloodthirsty beasts, howling at the moon. They also appear as werewolves, half wolf and half human creatures in horror stories, or as the big bad villain who eats Red Riding Hood's grandmother. So what are real wolves like? You might be surprised. Ooh, this is a good one too. Okay, so what I like about this introduction is that it describes some ideas that people might have about wolves that actually are not accurate. And then it really makes me curious to know what is accurate about wolves by asking the question, so what are real wolves like? You might be surprised. So another thing I could try with my introduction is to say something like, you might think that polar bears are like this, and describe some things that people might think about polar bears, but then at the end ask the question, so what are polar bears actually like? You might be surprised. So that's another thing that I could try with my introduction. Okay, I'm getting some really good ideas. I'm going to read the next one. This is from a book called Panda Kindergarten. One panda cub is a sight to see. 2 panda cubs together is rare. But imagine seeing 16 young giant pandas all at once. Meet a panda kindergarten class at the Wolong Nature Reserve in China, where pandas are protected, loved, and given great care. Okay, this is a little bit different. This one kind of makes me imagine what it would be like to see a panda, and and gives me some interesting facts about pandas too to make me curious. Like one panda cub is a sight to see, two panda cubs together is rare. But imagine seeing 16 young giants all at once. Okay, sorry, I've got an email that just popped up. So how to make it go away. I'm going to pause the video for a sec. I'll be right. Okay, so now I have read through 3 sample introductions, and I have written up what I think introductions need to do into this poster. And then I've also written down some things that I might try for my own introduction. So I'm going to switch over into a Microsoft Word document, and I'm using Microsoft Word so that you can see what I'm typing. It's easiest for you to see what I'm writing this way. But it doesn't matter to me whether you use Microsoft Word or whether you use Google Docs or whether you handwrite things and send me a picture of them. Whatever works best for you for your writing is just fine. This is just easiest for me to show you what's going on. Okay, I'm going to make this a font that works well for you to see. I like to use Century Gothic. Okay, and I'm just going to start by writing that this is the introduction. Okay. All right, so I know that my introduction needs to make my reader feel excited about the topic. I know that my introduction needs to get my reader curious to read more. And I know that my introduction needs to explain a little about what the reader will learn in my report. And then here are some things that I might try based on what I just learned. I'm going to hold this up and sneak my head behind it so I can read aloud to you. I might try starting with a sound effect like the turtle report. I might describe my animal with sensory details. I could start with a sentence like, imagine you're, and then describe what it's like to be the animal. I could start with something like, picture this, and describe the animal doing something. Or have you ever wondered? I could describe an interesting fact about my animal. I might start with something like, you might think, and then list some facts, or not some facts, but some ideas people might have about my animal that they're wrong about. And I might say something like, learning about a real polar bear might surprise you because, okay, so I'm going to think, how do I want to start my report? I don't really know what a polar bear sounds like, so I'm not going to do a sound effect. I might try the imagine you're a polar bear. So let me see here. What do I know polar bears like to do? I know that they're patient hunters. I know that they're tough, like they can be out in really cold weather and it doesn't bother them. I know that they usually are born in twins. Okay, so I think I'm having some ideas. Imagine you're a polar bear cub. You are wandering through a snowstorm with your twin sister, let's say. You're following your mother closely to learn how to hunt for your own food. You know being a polar bear, not a panda bear is risky. I remember from my reading that not many polar bears actually make it to adulthood, like a lot of the kids die. And that's a sad fact, but it's also a fact that might make my reader really curious to know more. So I think I'm going to mention that next. You know, being a polar bear is risky. Not many polar bear cubs survive to adulthood. Okay, so now I want to do the part. I've made the reader feel excited about the topic by having them picture what it's like to be a polar bear. I've made the reader curious to read more because maybe they're kind of wondering why polar bear cubs don't survive. Now I need to explain a little bit about what the reader will learn in my report. So I'm just going to kind of describe each of my chapters just very quickly. So I'm going to say not many polar bears cubs survive to adulthood. In this report, you will learn about how polar bears behave, what they eat, where they live, and more. Okay, now I want one more sentence that tells my reader, like, I hope you like my report. I hope you learn a lot about polar bears here. But I want to make it a little bit creative how I say it. So I think I'm going to say something like, read on to fill your brain with interesting facts about polar bears. Okay, so I'm going to reread it one time, make sure I did all the things I'm supposed to do with an introduction. Imagine you're a polar bear cub. You are wandering through a snowstorm with your twin sister. You're following your mother closely to learn how to hunt for your own food. You know being a polar bear is risky. Not many polar bear cubs survive to adulthood. In this report, you will learn about how polar bears behave, what they eat, where they live, and more. Read on to fill your brain with interesting facts about polar bears. Okay, so I think I did it. I made the reader feel excited about my topic by describing what it might be like to be a polar bear. I got my readers curious to read more. And I explained a little about what the reader will learn in my report. And then I ended it with a sentence kind of inviting my reader to keep reading. Okay, so this chart that explains what an introduction needs to have will be in the animal reports folder. So will some different things that you can try in your introduction, some ideas and some sentence starters. It would be great for you to finish your introduction by Friday and send it to me by the end of Friday, or send it to your teacher by the end of Friday. You don't need to resend all of your chapters. You can just send the introduction. Then next week, we will write conclusions, we'll add some text features, and we'll put all the different parts together into one big report. Okay, thanks so much for watching. I really can't wait. I know I say this every time, but it's totally true. I love getting your work. I can't wait to read your introductions. Thanks, guys.